are some things which I
छोड़ दी थी सद्गुरुभ्यो नमः। ओम श्री कृष्णाय परब्रह्मणे नमः। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः।
Namaste, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. So we are in different time zones because there are several people who have joined the gathering and the online session as well as the group. We thought just a little bit of context might be very appropriate to start with. In this particular Gita Karma Yoga, if you want to call karma, what we are doing, karma focused context here, there are extraordinary commentaries and extraordinary lectures given on Bhagavad Gita by several people whom we know. Some of them are alive and continue to comment on it. And some of them have written and some of them have given talks and some of them are accessible through writings, YouTube, and some of them are available for conversations and all of that. But there are lots of people, like I found out that when I talked to my children this week, I asked them whether my children have read the Bhagavad Gita. Nope, they have not. So they have been with me. I've been talking about this for a long time. When I honestly asked the question, have you ever read the Bhagavad Gita? I found no. First, I felt guilty. Second, I felt angry. And the third, I began to realize Bhagavad Gita doesn't require me to tell other people, hey, read this, read that. I think it is a powerful enough text that it can stand by itself. The best that I can do, or any one of us can do, is first of all, introduce ourselves to Bhagavad Gita and see what it communicates to us, what it, comes through to us, what resonates with us. So in some respects, our interest is to introduce to some people who have not been exposed. So for example, you might come across when you are in small groups, some people have written books on Bhagavad Gita who are in your group. Some people who are professors who are using and who are doing research on Bhagavad Gita, who are actually having a postgraduate as well as research scholars who are in this gathering. There are people who give lectures on Bhagavad Gita on a regular basis. They are in your group. And there are people who are not even reading the chapter, have not read the entire chapter. They have only read comments of other people on LinkedIn, and based on the slokas that are mentioned by some people, they read the commentary and say, this sloka looks interesting. I want to read that. Or I'm interested in certain comments that you have made, but let me see what I can make sense of it. Like that, there are people. So there are people who are all the way from complete novice, even now when we are discussing 5th chapter, who have not yet read lot of things even till 5th chapter, to people who can give extraordinary talks. Even now, if I can stop some of you and say, please give me the summary of Bhagavad Gita, some of you can do some phenomenal job that can be very, very interesting and inspiring. So we are addressing not to scholars alone, but we are interested in inspiring people to contemporize, contextualize, and see how Gita resonates to you. And when you resonate with messages from Gita, shlokas from Gita, what will you do? How will you apply? So we are consciously saying, you are an Arjuna, you don't even know who Krishna is, you have no context or no understanding of what Krishna can tell you and who that person is that you are talking to. And this is awakening of the Arjuna context in yourself. So just remember that part. So thank you for joining. And some of you who have joined for the first time, I welcome you. And there is a lot of interesting material that is coming out on LinkedIn. Some of you reading it and then commenting just on, these are my actions, this is what I'm excited by, and this is what I want to do, this is how I interpret it. I welcome you and I say namaste to you and thank you for your contribution. Some of you, like for example, Suresh Srinivas ji had put a 1-hour talk by Dr. Raju, and that I found it to be very inspiring. And very inspiring because some of his poems that he wrote based on inspiration he got from different chapters, different slokas, I found them to be very, very meaningful. And some of you are talking about different elements of what has been done, because the 5th chapter is one of the most important chapters. Even though many of the chapters are elaborating on what you learned in 2nd chapter, some key points that are being raised in 5th chapter have got relevance to all the 8 topics that we are talking about, whether it is self-development, whether it is leadership, whether it is about how to do action, what is important. I think very, very clearly, very focused way, the 5th chapter addresses many of the questions that we might have so far. So I'm really curious to see what you will discuss and what you will come up with. So instead of giving questions or things to reflect on, I would like you to have conversations focused on whatever theme that we have addressed, we have identified. Whether it is self-development, whether it is education, whether it is communication, whether it is leadership, whether it is relationships, whether it is career development, women's issues, or youth issues. Please, get into the group. Some of you might have not chosen a group to join. Once, if you have not done that, you will get a chance as various people go into the group, which group you want to go into. because larger number of people, we thought we will have conversations in small groups before you come back. Last 2 points I want to make are, some of you have been asking, can we have an additional session so that we can actually dig deeper into what is happening in some chapters. Like some chapters are deeper and some discussions are incomplete in the short time that we have. Half an hour is not good enough. I understand and I appreciate what you are saying, because I think I have been reflecting on some of them for 30 years and I have made a little bit of progress. There is a lot of path to go. So um, I highly recommend for each of you to meet in small groups, but because some of you are asking, we can have on Wednesday the same type if you want, if you are interested. If you want to join, maybe you can let us know either some of the messages in the WhatsApp group or on the chat session, or let Kalyan know. If there are people who are interested in meeting on Wednesday same time, we'll be happy to have. And in that 1.5 hours, we can have like a 45 minutes. You can have deeper conversation. 2 reasons for having deeper conversation. One, some of you are already beginning to work on some book chapters or some deeper work on how to apply what you are learning from this Our Gita project into whatever you are doing. So if you are interested in writing more, or even there are people here, like for example, one person said they want to look at mental health of youth and what Gita is saying. And that person himself is a teenager. So like that, there are people who have taken on some projects. So if you want to gather here and have larger conversations, you could go into same group, you can go into other groups if you want. That is one possibility. We will have 45 minutes for you to discuss and go deeper into. And if you are interested in writing your own book, or if you are interested in creating for your students, for your audience, if you want to do something further, you can use that for 45 minutes. Other 45 minutes, we will take it as a Q&A. So you don't have to report back on what you discussed there, but we can have a Q&A, and different people may be able to ask and then take it to next level. So we can try out this Wednesday. Same link will work. Wednesday, same time. Whoever want to join, want to gather, we can take it forward. All right. And that's what I have. Any other comments or questions? If you have anything urgent, we can do it. Otherwise, we can go back into the groups. And if some of you have not chosen, stay back and tell us, or you can send it in a chat session, which group you want to gather. By the way, you might also notice, even though we have picked 8 topics, some of the topics, there are more number of people and they are moving forward quickly. Some of the topics, there is not as much energy. That's fine. There is nothing wrong with it. So if you go to a group and there is nobody there, you can come back and then choose to go to some other group. So we are actually allowing whatever happens in here is something that is like Krishnarpanam. We are taking it and we are working with it. So I encourage you to have really meaningful and fun conversations with the people whom you have been meeting for a while, or some of you might be new people in your group. And look forward to seeing you in another half an hour. For me, it's to take it forward.
Yeah. But this chapter has been more questions, right? One of the toughest chapters. I know it becomes tougher and tougher as we move forward, but this has been quite strong so far.
Oh, that's good. That's
So, Prasad ji will have Dr. Raman cover the summary this time for a change.
sure.
So,
We'll do that. And Aravindo, Dr. Aurobindo has raised his hands,
Yes,
then Sundarji, then Atulji. So, and I think these are three hands that have come up so far. And I think Santosh ji also has raised. So we'll go in that order. Aurobindo ji, you want to
Yes,
start?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I will exactly take 3 minutes, like I've been
Yeah,
clocking
please.
myself.
Thank you.
So
And which
we had a
group, each of you, when you
self
speak, will you say that? That will be great. Okay, please.
Yes, sir. Namaskar to everybody. I belong to the self development group, and all our we had a very fantastic discussion today. Let me summarize what we discussed overall. One who is controlled, the mind is eligible for Sampurna Yoga and perform actions without attachment. Like detachment is letting go of the attachment to material possessions and maintain your emotions, have self control, be aware of your trigger points of anger and self-reflection and inner peace. Be mindful of whatever it is that you do. And renunciation does not mean inaction. You cannot be sitting quiet, idle, and say I have done karma sannyasa. That doesn't work like that. You have to perform, yet you have to be detached. And that is the question that was raised by one member as to how do I do it? How do I achieve it in real life? And some of the senior experienced members shared their understanding as to this is not a one day process. It is a continuous abhyasa. You have to keep on constantly practicing it. Otherwise, you will go back to the old ways of being there and see everything in you and see you in everything and find joy in everything that you do, whether you are eating, sleeping, whatever it is that you're doing. Just Sri Krishna Arpanamastu, like Prasad ji started the theme in the starting today. And also, knowledge is always engulfed and enveloped in Maya, and we have to be very careful and mindful of everything that we do, as to what we think, what we say, what we do, has to be in sync. Otherwise, Maya will take over, and Maya's andhakar will take over. And we need to have a samadarshana, that means to see everything as equal as you. So there is no unch, neech, ucha, neech, nothing of that sort. And desire leads to fear that we don't want to lose this, and that fuels anger, and we need to understand the trigger of this and see whether are we really following that or not. The going forward from now onwards is to reduce fears and as much reduce desires as much as possible and as a conscious effort, and this will reduce further fear and ignorance as well. And we cannot the god of the universe cannot decide what you should do or what action you should do or you should not do. It is us who does that, and in a sannyasa bhava, and getting the work for getting the work done from others as self development, we need to work even more harder than the others. Only then we can get the work done from others, or else we will get that kartrutva bhavana, saying I am the one doing it and all this is because of me and all those things. So we should start detaching ourselves from that. And that completes 2 minutes 50 seconds, Prasad ji, and this is the summary of our discussion for the self-development group.
Thank you very much, Aurobindo ji. There are a couple of thoughts that come to my mind when you said what you said. The self-development is a context or is something that we talk about. There are two important words. When I look at the Bhagavad Gita, especially the Karma Sannyasa Yoga, that is the name of the chapter, right? So when we are looking at what we are doing is not letting go of the work, but how do we do the action, but renounce the fruits of action. Nishkama karma is the primary theme in this particular one. The most powerful way in which I have practiced, and I found, especially when you are saying something that came to my mind, was I began to role play when I read this chapter. I began to say, like if I'm having a conversation with my colleagues, I looked at it and said, can I do it without ego? Like right now, if I'm talking to you, can I talk to you based on what I'm learning, not as a facilitator of the group, but as a person who is also reflecting with you, reading with you. I also have a Bhagavad Gita right next to me. and I had looked at and I had been thinking about. So what have I developed? The word that you used, Arvindoji, the knowledge. So if I look at it, the words that are used in the Sanskrit language in Gita is word gnanam. Gnan in Hindi or gnanam in Sanskrit, if I were to look at. While that is roughly translated as knowledge, I know a gentleman, what you call Dr. Krishnamurti, who was the deputy director of BITS Pilani, and I had met him in 93, 94. He had come to give a talk in Stanford University, and his son used to live in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I had a long chat with him. What he helped me to recognize, and that for now, 1994, it's exactly 30 years since I had the conversation, when he talked to me saying, Prasad, you live in Silicon Valley. Don't interpret Gnanam as knowledge, that you talk about data and information and knowledge. He said, this knowledge is very different. Actually, it is focused on the process of knowing, not process or not the end result of what you know. So, what does knowing do to you? Because if you have the arrogance, I am doing this, this is my knowledge, this is some of it, you are actually disengaged from the world. So the self is, self-development is not about you developing yourself. It is actually, when you read this, it is like Krishna developing you. It is like the group in which you engaged with. How are other people developing you? And how are you going from I, me, and myself, moving from the I stage to mama, mine, my stage, to getting to self. So that means I myself have a certain context of seeing who I am is in a larger context, the larger self. That means I am connecting with you and others and life itself through Krishna's comment. That means development is, is connected with knowing, and that knowing is a process, and that process is flowing through me, flowing through you, and flowing through all of us, and it is bringing up something, my deeper invisible self, to be developed. The last point I'll make, and then we'll go to another one, is development is distinct from learning, teaching, training, all of them. Why is that? Development actually destroys the context with which we started learning and growing. The learning takes place within who I think I learned this. There is arrogance in it. It is like as if I'm superior to, I am going to get the gist of Gita in me. But what if you look at Gita to develop you? Gita to give you a frame. It is not, reading Gita is not about getting a concept in your mind, but reading Gita in such a way, something resonates within your heart, within your actions, something emerges. You are not applying Gita. You are allowing Krishna to communicate to you. That is what I mean by awakening the Arjuna within you. When you do that, development takes place. Actually, it takes place beyond the frame that you have, who I think I am. It actually goes in and something gets transformed. That is what we call transcendence in the spiritual context. We call it transformation in the transformational leadership, or some of it in the business context. But allowing ourselves through these sessions, week after week after week, how are we allowing ourselves to be transformed by the conversations with other people, by reading these chapters, by looking at the LinkedIn, what other people have posted? There is something that is happening, allowing it to bathe in that wisdom. So knowledge we are talking about is going to give you the perspective, because you are in the process of knowing. And that knowing, so it is like saying, reading the Bhagavad Gita and making 1, 2, 3 are the first step. These are the actions I'm going to take because I'm resonating. Second step is having deeper conversations with each of you. I'm hoping, and as you are mentioning, you are finding a lot of value and a lot of gems are coming out. I'm glad for that. So the self-development itself, if I were to put it in the 5th chapter context, the Karma Sannyasa Yoga will help me to develop the self, which I call myself. I am in the flow of this consciousness that is emerging. I want to be an observer. I want to be a Sakshi. Like somebody had put, Sakshi means Swayam Vibhati Ata Anyena Sadhanam Vina. That means, forgive me for suddenly going into Sanskrit, but this one I wanted to just make a definition. That means it shines by itself. Anyena sadhanam vina. It doesn't require any external light to fall on it. It doesn't require anything else. It actually becomes luminous all by itself. That is called Sakshi. So when we awaken that Sakshi Bhavana, self-development is a natural consequence to a certain extent. Like what Arbindoji also said, when I let go of I am doing it, this is my action, this is my result, and I am the Kartrutva Bhavam, you said. That is what in 5th chapter it comes. When I let go, when I become a witness to what is happening in me and around me, there is a lot of joy because something begins to emerge. Krishna will act on me. I don't have to act on Bhagavad Gita 5th chapter. Krishna will act through me. And whatever comes, then it becomes Krishnarpana. That is what I got. Thank you for inspiring that, Arabindoji, and a wonderful conversation. Thank you. Sundarji?
So Arunaji, myself, Preeti Pandeji and Aditi ji were part of this group of focused on youth. We have an interesting challenge that everybody wants to know how to take these concepts to the youth. So if there are more people experienced in connecting with youth, we'd welcome that to that discussion. Today's discussion was interesting in that this whole concept of without attachment, the yukta karma phalam tyaktva, and then ayukta kama karena, the contrast is there in that verse. That becomes a source of doubt because I don't know how that is practically possible. All of us, in fact, do have exposure to people in our environment who have managed to demonstrate that.
Yeah.
And yet how they do that is what is not clear to us. So that is one thing that comes. The other is the Gita is teeming with great teachings. And so the automatic question comes, how do I take it? How do I explain that to the youth? And in that, there is a lesson to be learned from Krishna himself, that rarely does Krishna answer the direct meaning of the question. He always answers the implied question. And so, like in this chapter itself, even though Arjuna starts off saying, tell me whether sannyasa or karma yoga is better, Krishna says, no, that's not the point of this discussion. The point of the discussion is what is right for you. So, and for each of us who's approaching the Gita as a student, The question is, what is right for me? So now when we talk about questions, the challenge is that whether it is youth or whether it is I myself approaching the Gita, we sometimes get overwhelmed by our own questions.
Yes.
Sometimes we get too attached to our questions. So that is the part that we need to watch out for, even when we are working with youth. Both things are relevant. That means we have to pay attention to what question the youth is asking and not be ready to pour out what is in my head.
Yeah.
So the addressing the context in which the youth is operating, the youth is asking is relevant. And for that, we need to get to know them better. So that is where that questions are extremely wonderful tool, but they also can be an obstacle in our development, right? So that is one part. And then the other part is, I think the part that Arunaji was very clear about is that it is only when we feel that we are convinced with what the Shastra offers and that I have gained from it. And that is regardless of what people see me as. People may see me as a slow, as a person who's not accomplished much. But because of what I've gained from the Shastra, I am very clear on what I have got. Then I'm really in a position to share. So these were some of the key points that came up. So Arunaji, if I missed out something, please jump in, either in the chat or separately.
No, Sundarji, it's all put together well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Over to you.
Thank you, Sundarji. I think you brought some very interesting points. Number one, when we are asking questions, why are we asking those questions? So it feels like I'm raising a question about a question, but a good friend, and some of you know, Raghu Anantanarayan, reminded me a long time ago when we started this Institute of Indic Wisdom, saying that the essence of third chapter could be put into one question. He said, when you are doing what you are doing, reflect on what are you really doing. So when you are doing what you are doing, what are you really doing is the question that he looked at. Reason for that is many questions we ask are superficial. They have a very quick answer that can come. Especially if you can help youth to discover who they are in whatever they are doing, I think we have done our job. Actually, our job is not necessarily to give them wisdom, give them knowledge, because they will pick up what they need to pick up from our behavior much more than our words. As a matter of fact, our words sometimes confuse them because we don't practice what we preach in the way in which they look at it. See, if you have question, you can talk to your own children. They'll tell you how many gaps are there between what we say and what we do. So if we can help them to ask right questions, if we can help them to identify what are some questions which remain in you even after you got some answers for them, those are called what you call sticky questions. Why? Because that sticky question will allow you not only to find an answer from somebody, that question requires you to discover answer from within you. Those are the questions that lead to development. And those are the kind of questions which lead to Atma Vidya. If we can help youth to really guide them to make their own choices, not necessarily what we tell them. Yes, Shastras have given, and we can give them boundaries and we can give them values, and we can give them, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do that. Even Upanishads, what you call, they tell you, like Sikshavalli. If you try to look at towards the Sikshavalli, which is the, by the way, for some of you who are not familiar with, in Taittiriya Upanishad, Sikshavalli is the first part. And it says, Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, like it's not Atiti Devo Bhava, but there are specific things that it says, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. It tells you. And that is good as a startup, because that we need to give them boundaries so that they can be safe. But the most important lesson Krishna is teaching us through the way in which he answers the questions, like Sundarji has pointed out, Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to discover deeper answers by touching upon some meta level answers he is giving, so that he is guiding Arjuna to make his own choice. We need to ask, when we talk to children, or we give them do this or don't do this, or we give them to reflect upon, discover what they really want, and based on who they are and what they want, can they make meaningful choices that reflect their authentic self? Why is that important? Because the peer pressure is enormous right now. Especially, we don't even know what their peer pressures are, because the messages come through WhatsApp, messages come through Instagram, messages come through TikTok. May not be in India, but other parts, TikTok is still there. So there are lots of influences that they have. Can they identify which is the meaningful influence that they need to follow? I think if we can even help them to identify what is a good message to follow, what is not a good message to follow, that itself is the most important contribution that we can make. So, how to get youth not to succumb to peer pressure, whether it comes in real, virtual, digital, doesn't matter, so that they can discover who they are, what they really want, what choices they need to make based on the context that they are in front of. I think that if we can do it, the karma sannyasa yoga will come alive for them, because then the desires and the anger and various other things that we talk about, focus on the action, not the result, all of them will become clear to them. Thank you, Sundarji, for bringing this up. Atulji?
Namaskara. I'll try to be quick. So basically, got a lot of good stuff happened about the Padma, the lotus, how we have to learn from the lotus. The system around us is very noisy, very muddy. Outside your home park may look beautiful, but it's a physically beautiful, but not with the internal things. So we discussed that how we can learn from them. And these 520 was Isthir Buddhiro Samuro Brahmvidhu Brahmani, like how we have to be inside the muddy system and be like a lotus flower. And many times we don't see because of muddiness smell. Lotus flower also has fragrance. So you also give the fragrance to the world, whatever your individual. This is one of the things there. Then we have a discussion that guru is very, very important to take us to the next level. And I agree with you when you say, hey, what Krishna, what we are learning and all of them, then we've come up with one of these saying from Kabir, Guru Govind do khade kake lagu pao, baliyari Guru Dev Govindyo pathaye, right? So we have to go for Guru first, then Govind. Now here I have a confusion as I'm thinking about it. Krishna is a Guru and Krishna is a both. So Arjun is treating him as a Guru or as a God, how, or all in one? Maybe you can answer later on. And let me conclude this. And then we really put a lot of stuff on Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Sannyas Yoga. They are nothing but they are part of the way I visualize 3 leg tools. So you cannot sit on 1 leg tool. So 3 legs, karma yoga, sannyas, all of them are making your life stable if you follow them. They are not different. They are making your life stable. This is one game. And I think overall discussions was pretty good. And I can read what people have told, but what I was thinking, I'll put these notes into the LinkedIn profile. People can add and we can reflect upon it. Seeing the time, I'll give back to you, Rishabh.
And what is the group focus,
It's a
Atulji?
leadership. Sorry, I could have mentioned
Leadership.
that.
Yeah, leadership. Excellent. You brought some very important points. Couple of thoughts that come to me based on what you are raising. You are right. Actually Arjuna himself asks, should I focus on gnana? Should I focus on karma? Should I focus on sannyasa? All of these come in. Actually, this is a very, very important chapter because the 6th chapter goes into certain practices and certain meditation and some other things. There are specific instructions in 6th chapter, but in the 5th chapter, Gnana, Karma, Sannyasa. There are beautiful concepts which it comes to. As a leader, there are some things to be done. But in the context of leadership, I'm just trying to make a subtle difference. Leader is a person. On the other hand, leadership is a field in which we can operate. But the moment we talk about leader, what does a leader look for? Sometimes a follower. But when we operate not as a leader, but when we operate from the field of leadership, who are the other people in that field? They are also leaders. So to a certain extent, even based on how we look at what we are looking at, just like a few minutes ago we talked about, knowledge is something we try to hold. But knowing is the field in which you immerse yourself. Similarly, leader is a personification of the field frozen in time and space in a particular person taking a role. But if we are operating from the field of leadership, there is freedom for us to choose to say, I don't know. Can you help me? You be the leader. That vulnerability and opportunity to let go of the ego, let go of what Krishna said here, that the kama, krodha. If you can let go of the personal desire without having an ego as I am the leader, you are a follower, you can actually ask for guidance. You can ask for mentorship, or you can also serve as a guide. You can also serve as a mentor or as a coach or as a person who protects the other person. And there is a particular thing which Krishna says in this 5th chapter. Without getting entangled in what am I getting out of this? What is my personal gain? So what we talked about so far, without the kartrutva and bhoktrutva bhavas, you can be a leader to somebody because you are not putting them down as I am a leader, you are a follower, but we are all learners, we are all leaders, we are all learning together. And if I learn from you, doesn't make me inferior to you or superior to you. I am here to be part of this team environment where actions are driven by the collective goals, what is larger good, rather than personal ambitions or personal anger and frustration from there. So the key thing which I take away based on what your discussions and based on my own reading of Bhagavad Gita, a leader is a person that without ego of I being superior or inferior, I treat everybody equal. That is one of the shlokas. He says, it doesn't matter. Samabuddhi, samatvam. We talk about samatvam yoga uchyate in second chapter, but here it comes down again. Can I have that equanimous attitude? Can I have that samatva bhavana without the ego, without personal desire, controlling my anger? Can I serve as a guide or as a mentor, as a protector? That means, it is like saying to the person who reports into me to say, you take the risk. Let us talk about it, but I'm willing you to take a risk and I will protect you if something goes wrong. That kind of an ability to do something which is for the collective good without a personal gain, if we can do that, it will be good. So the question which you might want to take is, how can you this week act being a leader and foster a team environment in your workplace or in your community or in your family, where you are actually encouraging the environment where actions are driven by collective good rather than your desires or your thing. Try it out. See whether you can do your personal ambitions or letting go, but you are actually going to be a facilitator of the environment in which you are in, where the larger good happens just for 1 week. Do a role play. You be the leader wherever you are. And by the way,
Sure.
I'm not saying this to this group alone. Why we are having this conversation is self-development, youth, leadership, all of them for all of us. How are we intermingling and integrating? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Santosh. Yeah, thanks. Santosh.
Yeah. So I represent the group on career development. So we had some very good conversations in the group. And a couple of things that stood out was continuing to what you were saying, the equality that is there, that when we are looking at it from a career perspective, take in the inputs and participation of others with whom you are working. So that way your decision making also becomes a little rounded, as opposed to it's always being I, me, myself. So that was one point that came up. See everybody as equal, and then that will sort of help you also grow your career pretty well. The other element that came in was that don't be overpowered by your senses, control your senses. So that will help you respond as opposed to react. And in career development, I think responding is that much more important than reacting, because when you react, then the reaction from the other side is going to be opposite and equal, which means that you may be not able to grow yourself. So that was another point that came up within the group. The other piece that came in was around this word on yoga yukta, how you need to sort of, there's different variations of yoga that you need to do, but in the sense of controlling yourself, also the piece where the statement that says that, hey, the body and the mind needs to be together for you to sort of harness both of those. And once you harness those, you're able to sort of do better. So that can also be applied for career development. And the key thing, I think, eventually goes down to that thing on Nishkama Karma, which is the process of learning, the process of doing an activity itself is good enough. As long as you focus on that and not worry about the outcome and the results, whatever happens, you would be able to sort of grow. But if you keep focusing on the outcome and say, I'm doing X because I will get to Y, then Y may not actually happen. But if you say, I'm just doing X for the sake of doing X and learn through the whole process, then the impact that it can actually have on your own growth and your career growing is much better than being focused on the thing. And I could actually relate to that very much, because when I have done projects where I have really focused on learning something new and applying that, the outcome has been much better than just focusing on the outcome. Yes, the outcome was good, but the further result of that outcome was not all that good. So I was able to relate very well to that. So those are some of the conversations that we had. And team, if I missed anything, please feel to add in or put it in the chat.
Thank you, Santoshi. When you talk about career development and doing things with Nishkama Karma, some time ago, I had a coaching engagement. I was working with a energy company in the Bay Area called PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric. While I was working with them, there was one gentleman who was seriously thinking of leaving the company. So it was a lunchtime interaction. I was not directly coaching him, but he was a person who is still a, what you call a new employee to the company. He happened to be at my lunch table and we were talking. When he heard about this, he said, I heard you talk about doing things without worrying about money, without worrying about promotion, without worrying about results. How is that possible? It is not something that is workable. I asked him why. He says, I'm in PG&E for about 9 months. I'm seriously thinking of quitting. I asked him why. He said, I really worked hard and my supervisor really likes me. Only problem is, because I work hard and I finish the projects without any, what you might call headquarters getting interfering and are asking for more resources. Anytime I go, I'll get the job done and I'll do it quickly. But my boss, whenever I say I finish this job, he will give me another job. He will give me another job. So sometimes I'm ending up doing twice the work of another colleague, but I'm not getting twice the salary. So you are telling me that I should keep doing more work when compared to my colleagues, just because my what you call my supervisor thinks that I'm good, I should be given more work. This is unfair. Then I told him, now in 9 months, you are telling me you have become a favorite to your supervisor so that any projects that are important, he is giving it to you. Is that right? He said, yes. And you bring a lot of customer satisfaction. You do it quickly and you do it without any additional resources. So customers are also happy with you. Is that correct? He said, yes. And he sends you on important projects and he gives you more work than others because you are able to get the job done much better. Is that correct? He says, yes. So I told him, do you think he will give you a reference? He said, yeah, he told me before. He told me he can give a reference to me and he is actually thinking when there is an opening, he will make me a, supervisor myself. And he is already asking me to train other people. And even my supervisor's manager told me that I'm a good guy. Then I told him, aren't these what actually you look for? You may not be getting immediately raised. You may not be getting a bonus, but your future is being more secure. Your career is being planned to a certain extent. They identify you. He is already looking at you 9 months into the job that you should be promoted. You are promotable. He is giving you additional work because there are more cases they can validate saying that you are actually capable and you are actually able to, there is more evidence to show that you are good. Why am I saying this example is sometimes in career, we look for immediate gratification. or immediate ways to know whether I'm making progress or not. In the Karma Sannyasa Yoga, what Krishna is saying is, do whatever you can to the best of your ability. Do it without any personal ambition or a goal. Do it for the larger good. And when you do things with excellence, without attachment to outcome, there are three things that can happen. One, the bosses notice. Even though there is no immediate benefit, you will impress them. Second, you will have a true job satisfaction. Number three, you are learning a lot more, and your ability to, in your resume, you have more bullets that you can put, that you can take it to other job or other department in the same company, or to get a recommendation or even a review at the end of the year. You have so many things you have done very well. How do you think it will look? So in some respects, like I think we discussed it once before, any question that is easily answerable, any desire that can easily be fulfilled, that will not lead to any growth, let alone development. Here we are differentiating development, which takes over time, which is disruptive, which will change your framework. That we are calling it as a development. Growth can be incremental or large. And I learned a little bit here. I grew a little bit here. I became better here. That also becomes something important. In a career development, you need both. But some of them may have immediate benefits. Many of them may not have immediate benefits. When you can do without desire, without anger, with detachment to outcome, nishkama karma, when you can do your best, not the karma sannyasam, but karma phala sannyasam, if you can do what has been told in the 5th chapter, your career develops by leaps and bounds, even though sometimes you may not be able to see the immediate results right away. That's what I'm getting. I hope this is something you are able to see as well.
Yeah. If I may just add one thing, sir, that they talk about the bamboo, where you actually keep watering the bamboo for many, many months, and there is absolutely nothing that you think is going to happen. But once it shoots, in 6 months, it grows to become 6 feet, right? So some of these things that are there, you're doing it for your own learning. You may not see the immediate results, but when those results actually happen, that growth can be phenomenal. I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, that's a very good example. And not only in a, what you call in a plantation or in a plant kingdom, you can also think about, now India, around the world, there is so much of infrastructure stuff is going on. If a building has to be 10 floors, the foundation has to be of certain depth. If the building has to be 15 floors, the foundation is a lot deeper. So to a certain extent, if you look at the building construction, for several days and sometimes several weeks, you may not see any building on the top of the ground, because all the work is happening underground. But once the deep, solid, meaningful foundation has been built, building comes up very quickly on the top of it. So same way, we are developing internally. And once that internal development is solid, aligned, and meaningful, the external development happens much more quickly. Thank you for bringing that up. And Ramanji?
Yeah, thank you. So today I represent our communication group, and we discussed it in the context of chapter 5.
Okay.
And I must tell, there was frank, honest communication, and I could see, be it like in our group, Dr. Sham, Taraji, Pavanji, Satyakrishna, and me, and I could see that we all were like helpless Arjuna, because while communicating, lot many thoughts were communicated internally and with honest discussion, that is it while we are reading, are we understanding? If we understand, how do we in fact trying to put them into action, actionable learning, practice? Is it a kind of intellectualization that is happening with self, and how to put that into practice? And it is a kind of Arjuna's helplessness. And so coming to chapter 5, which is karma sannyasa yoga, and seeing that in terms of communication, we saw how deep listening, active listening is the important thing that is being understood here. And also while somebody listens, how he can come with questions till he understands it fully. See Arjuna, look at the build-up from chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, in 5 also, when it has been told that Jnana is Shrestha, right? You have been taught about Karma Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, Jnana is the right Shrestha. Now still Arjuna asks, is it karma or sannyasa from karma? And as you, Prasadji, while explaining now said, it's not sannyasa from karma, it's sannyasa from the phala of the karma phala. So that also I wanted to allude to. So what I'm saying, communication-wise, that deep listening happening with Arjuna and Krishna both in this chapter, and Krishna explaining with poise, and also anticipation of questions. When Arjuna asks this particular dilemma, and Krishna says, see, fruits of both the paths, fruits of both the paths are same, but the paths are different. And beautifully in chapter 4, Karma Yogi is defined. In chapter 5, Krishna communicates emphatically 6 characteristics of Karma Yogi. He says, no, yoga yukta visuddhatma vijitatma jitendriya sarva bhutanam atma bhutanam kurbhavanti na lipyante. So karma yogi, this again, so how you can be yoga yukta, purity in heart, winning over senses, and not being attached to the fruits. And atma bhuta sarva bhutanam. Sarva Bhutanang, Atma Bhutesu, Sarva Bhutanang, how you can treat everybody as your own. So besides that, while anticipating Arjuna's queries, Krishna says, what should be the attitude of a Karma Yogi and what should be the attitude of a Sankhya Yogi? So in verses 2 and 2 verses they are explained.
Ramanji,
So,
we may have to
So in this, so again, another aspect of communication comes, how the things should be completed, and the build-up happens in the communication in the Gita chapters. So from the 4th, the 5th, one essence is being captured, and how essentially how it need to be practiced. So the Krishna comes with the practice of meditation in verses 7, 27, 28. And as it moves to the chapter 6 on the meditation. So the Paddhati is being communicated so that a man can act as a karma yogi. So this is the thing, and we are helpless, sir. I tell you, the how to practice it, this is coming, right? Off and on. And so very wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ramanji. See, communication keeps coming back to 2 things. One is understanding what other person has been saying, what others have been saying. Second is understanding what is my life experience is saying when I'm listening to that. Third is responding to it. Again and again, it keeps coming back to listen and speak. There are 2 parts to it. If I am listening to speak, these are overlapping. My listening becomes very limited. But I am speaking only, but not listening, then I'll disconnect completely. There is no listening. I'm only speaking. Or I'm speaking to listen is another context which we can think about. I'm speaking, I'm hurrying all of that I'm saying so that I can get advice. I have all these conditions. I want to tell you, doctor, before you diagnose. The doctor will say, yeah, you are right. I will ask you specific conditions or various things that you are going through. But also, I have my own diagnostic methods to actually know what is going on with you. But if you can shut up long enough, then I can listen to what the stethoscope which I have put on your chest is telling me about what is happening in your heart and what is happening in your lungs. And if I can check the pulse, I need to be able to pay attention to what's going on. Sometimes you are speaking too loud, so I cannot hear you. Or sometimes you are speaking with so much of energy, I cannot take it. Sometimes you have so much of material, I'm overwhelmed. Sometimes your energy is so much, I am afraid. So that means in communication, even though they are only speaking and listening, or who is speaking and who is listening, what does communication, speaking mean in the context of body, in the context of emotions, in the context of team? Sometimes, like when you listen to other people, like my mentor, one gentleman, he was mentioning to me yesterday, Dr. Ken Anbender. He is a mentor for me for more than 40 years. I was talking to him. He said, he was having a conversation with a group of people. There were Singaporeans, Americans, Indians, Pakistanis, Europeans, all kinds of things like that. And it seems the Americans said these Singaporeans don't say anything to their boss. They let everything pass and they are afraid to speak up all of it. Then when Singaporeans are asked, why do you do what you do? They said, my boss has got a lot more experience than me to have become the boss. I want to honor and respect that person for their experience. Even though what they say might not appeal to me, I want to pay a little bit of attention to what they are saying before I take it to the next step. Similarly, when they asked, what is your impression of Americans? They said, they are in your face. They say whatever they want to say. They don't think, they have no respect, and they just want whatever they want to do. But when you ask the Americans, they said, no, we are saying this because we believe in freedom. We should be able to say whatever we want to say. Our kids can say whatever they want to say. So as the conversation went off, then they realized each person listens from their own perspective. Each person speaks from their own perspective. If we can only listen to and pay attention to the gap between speaking and listening, in that space between them, like, some of you, like, Tara and Rob are in UK. They talk about mind the gap. When you go to the train station, there is a gap between the platform and the train. You have to make sure that you don't fall between them. But if you don't have a gap, the trains and the platform will collide. There can't be any movement. Similarly, in communication, Krishnaji is saying, you need to create that space. You need to create that gap. And that gap and operating within that is called sannyasa. You do something, you say, I'm going to let go of my attachment to the outcome. I say something, and I'm going to let go of my attachment to my words impacting you. Let things resonate. Listen to that space. Listen to that space within you. because the space within you is much bigger than what you have paid attention to. When you pay attention to that gap or that space, instead of the stimulation or instead of what other people said or your reactions, in that space, something will emerge. Resonance will emerge. Magic will emerge. Transformation emerges. Pay attention to that. By the way, that is not directly connected to the stimulation, or it is not directly connected to you in your body, in your mind, where it is emerging. There is a lot of grace, Krishna's grace or field effect, whatever you want to call. That is joyful. If we can operate from that, that each communication becomes life-giving communication. The respect emerges by just deep listening, not being attached to something else. So maybe this week you can practice, how do I listen based on what I'm learning in Bhagavad Gita? How do I listen without attachment to, or without reacting to, or without having to give an answer, allowing the question to reverberate in our consciousness so that the answer will emerge between us, within us, that is meaningful to every one of us. If you can try that, it will be wonderful. As we end the session, I just want to remind, we will send a reminder again on Tuesday once. This Wednesday, any of you, if you want to join, we will have a session. By the way, that doesn't preclude you for you guys to get with your other team members some other time. But if you do want to come, I will be available. Other people may or may not be available. You can use that time for either asking questions or talking to me about the projects that you have taken on, or if there is some research or there is some writing or there is something else you are doing, we can discuss it. And if you didn't allocate some other time for your group to go deeper into some of them, you can also take time and you can go off into a group. When you come on the group, you can say, hey, we want to use this part of the time for going into our own groups and discussing further. Please feel free. Or if you want to have questions, you can feel free. So I am available on Wednesday, same time for 90-minute session. I just want to say that. Please, take care of yourselves and have wonderful, wonderful week. And, Suresh ji and some of them are even putting in like wonderful inspiration from Dr. Raju Garu or from other people. If any of you want to put both, your own reflections, what commentaries are you listening to, what are some things you encourage other people to read, put them on LinkedIn and start work on the 6th chapter quickly and try to stay in touch with your groups and have a wonderful, wonderful week. Namaste and bye-bye.